All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Samurai Brothers. I'm here with my brother Matthew. We are in episode 41 of our podcast. And Matthew, how was the trip to Vegas?
It was pretty fun. I actually didn't do any gambling. I was budgeting, but I just never got around to doing any gambling. So didn't
Okay.
didn't
Any fun
didn't.
attractions, or did you eat a lot?
Well, let's see. We went to through our parents' Hilton timeshare. They had this private event at what normally looks like is probably a uh um like a line dancing place, but they just they had a just a dude doing generic pop music, and it was a dinner table.
All right.
So
Anyway,
so there was that. We went to the what's it called? We went to the Pinball Hall of Fame, which was
yes.
basically a historic glorified arcade. It was fun. I'll just say that.
All right.
And then we rounded it off. Oh yeah, we also went to watch our cousin's husband's recreational baseball team, and and then we rounded it off with going to the King Tut exhibition at the Luxor.
Very nice. Yep.
I knew a lot of stuff about King Tut before this exhibition and about Egypt, but there were some things that I learned.
Yeah, he's definitely a one of the more, I guess, culturally famous pharaohs of ancient Egypt.
The ironic thing is that until he was discovered, he wasn't that well known. It was the discovery that kind of put him on the map, but it's also because he wasn't that well known and because his tomb was hidden that so many of the artifacts related to him stayed preserved and stuff like that. So he went from being this like unknown guy who only ruled for about a decade to being the most recognizable, one of the most recognizable pharaohs. Like when you think about Egypt and pop culture, what are two of the people that you think about? And one of them is King Tut. Yep. And Cleopatra's another one that you probably think about. But the ironic thing is, while she may have had some Egyptian ancestry,
yeah, she was mostly Greek.
Yeah, she spoke Greek. She didn't speak
Egyptian.
She didn't speak Egyptian.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing. This was not brought up in the exhibition, but fun fact: most modern Egyptians speak Arabic because the Islam came in and kind of took that. But the one community that speaks what's called Coptic Egyptian. That is the closest thing we have to what they were speaking at the time of the hieroglyphs, which it would be the equivalent of ancient Greek versus modern Greek. The person that one of the few communities that still speaks that are Coptic Christians.
Mm-hmm.
So, ironically enough, a Christian community in Egypt is the ones that are speaking the closest thing we have to the hieroglyphs.
That is an irony.
Yeah, that is an irony. But yeah, the world is always full of ironies. But anyways, so that was all the fun we had in Vegas. Vegas is one of those places where you cannot hit up all the major sites in one visit. You're going to have to go over and over and over and over and over. And we had a view of the Sphere, and we didn't even go to that thing. So that's kind of another thing when that I might want to hit up. I have no idea where we're going to hit up, if we're going to hit up anything when we go next year
to Nationals next year. That'll be something. We'll have to see about that. When we compete at the the U.S. Sumo Nationals, which kind of filters in, segues into our
Sumo.
first major sumo discussion, because we're still kind of fresh off the Natsu Basho. Obviously, Onosato was confirmed, and he accepted, the promotion to Yokozuna, and he did get taught the Undu style of the Yokozuna Dohyoiri, or the ring ceremony. And he's done it a few times now. He did it at Meiji Jingu Shrine, which is obviously that's where they perform it first. And then we had one former Koto Eko had his official retirement ceremony, which is basically that you get your top knot cut off, and he performed it there too, as far as the news I've been reading. So it's going to be an interesting time. With now that we have two Yokozuna, and Matthew, I think in a way this is good, because this is the first time we've had two Yokozuna since Kakuryu retired and left Hakuho on the Banzuke by himself. And then when they were going to promote Terunofuji, Hakuho retired. So
yeah, and these guys are of similar quality. Like any Yokozuna who was next to Hakuho, like I can't remember did Hakuho get promoted before or after Asashoryu?
Hakuho got promoted after Asashoryu.
Okay, yeah. So just as an example, is that it's for the longest time we haven't really had any kind of a co-equal partnership. The last time that we had one was during the time of even though Takanohana won more
Basho.
The rivalry between them was pretty even between him and Akebono.
Right.
And again, I don't think the merging of stables and let's be honest, Takanohana had the easier path. Whereas
he most certainly did. He was wrestling, against Maegashira all the way down to 6, 7, and 8, because the majority of his stable mates were up in the Sanyaku ranks.
Right, because you had Takanonami, who was an Ozeki. You had his brother Wakanohana, who I think he did have to face Wakanohana once because of a playoff, if I recall correctly. So the reality is he didn't have to face Wakanohana's brother. He didn't have to face Takanonami. Didn't have to face most of the other guys because they were top Sanyaku, and he didn't. Basically, Akebono was the one who always had to face the gauntlet versus Takanohana, who didn't have to face his stablemates who were, higher up. That's why between the two, Takanohana won more basho, because he didn't have to face the more challenging guys.
Whereas, well, and that's why I look at Asashoryu and Hakuho, with them being able to win all the Yusho that they won. They were really the only ones in their Heya who, they didn't have that same situation like Takanohana did. They had one or two stablemates in the division altogether, during their time, and certainly not up in the Sanyaku, and 100% not in, at the Ozeki ranks. So for them to have been able to win all those Yusho, I think, in a way elevates them, to, I think, the fact that they had to, face off against everyone.
So that makes more of a case as to why Hakuho is the greatest, because
hands down, Hakuho is the greatest. If you look at the stats, if you look at the numbers, you look at the results, Hakuho is the greatest of all time. There's no arguing that at all. 45 Yusho, more than 1,100 plus wins career wise, over 1,000 wins in the Makuuchi alone. And then the 63 match win streak. There's all sorts of stuff just to, there's so much. And, there are a lot of records that he achieved now, and some of that was through longevity sitting out, but he was a very smart guy as far as how to treat his injuries and stuff. Like if he, a lot of times when he would like lose a few matches within the first few days, he'd like get out, and then he'd come back, strong, either, taking like the Jun show or the U show. Like I think there were only probably maybe a few occasions where he would finish a 15-day basho and not be either Jun show or have the U show. And in fact, I bet you if I were to look at his Yokozuna records, I don't think he ever finished below a 10-5 at Yokozuna.
Well, to be fair, him sitting out was more towards the end of his career, kind of when.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah, so it's so that's often when Yokozuna kind of, it's like they've been going at it for over a decade. Their body's just battered, and at that point, I think it's one of those situations where at that point they're contemplating how much longer can I keep going, and
That's
realistically, Hakuho going out on a Zensho Yusho, you can't get much better than that.
No, you can't.
Terunofuji didn't go out like that. He went out on a whimper.
Yeah, unfortunately he did. And yes, I'm looking at Hakuho's career right now, and yes, he never finished his Yokozuna career. Whenever he went the full 15 days, he never finished lower than a 10-5, which in and of itself is like astonishing.
Well, to be fair, I think Ho showed you might have learned from that, considering that he pulled out after what, 5 days, because he was kind of like, I'm not.
He pulled out after 9 days.
Yeah, well, yeah, because he realized I'm not going to win the basho. I'm injured. I need to heal up so that next time I can go out and actually perform. And even though I don't know, was he even Junior show?
This basho, yes, he was. He finished 12-3, and he beat Onosato on the last day, which I think makes a statement in and of itself. That means that yes, this is likely going to be a 2. I think since they're both pretty young. I think Hoshoryu is I think he's still in his he's 20, he's 26, and Onosato's 24. So, we have a good maybe 4 to 5 years if these guys stay healthy, that we're going to see quite a bit going forward. And hopefully, yes, it is going to come down to we're going to have a dominant Yokozuna era going forward.
I was listening to one of the what's it called? So I hate to put it this way, some of the NHK English, like the NHK Japanese commentators, always the best, especially when you get Mainomi in there. And speaking of which, I'm glad that Mainomi, has had the post career he had commentating.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we always cheered for him as the smallest at the time, the underdog. And it was nice to see him it's been nice to see him have the post career he's had doing commentating all these years. But something that the English commentators, I'm wondering if it might be their cultural differences, because they're Japanese, because a lot of them are Japanese trying to translate it to English, but a lot of times they miss the.
Is it the actual, like, is it the, because they do have like the NHK World, I think, which is like completely different commentators, but then they'll have people who are probably translating the actual commentary of the Japanese broadcast.
It's the NHK World. That's what we have access to.
Oh, okay. I'd have to look at it, because I know that they have like 4 commentators who do their own.
They all go solo each day.
Yeah, they do. I don't think they're doing their own broadcasting. They're not translating the Japanese commentary.
Well, I think that's probably better, because you don't want a carbon copy.
No, they're not. They're putting their own spin on how everything is going.
The
My
problem
personal
is
favorite.
the problem is half the guys, like I said, just aren't. Maybe what they're saying might do well for like a European, because the reality is but Japan and Europe have similar cultural. I don't think people realize that, but Japanese has like humor and cultural references are a little bit closer. I
Oh,
don't
I
know
think
if
they.
that's specific. I don't know if that's specifically because of Japan, getting most of their modernization and certain Western cultural stuff from Europe. But it to me, these guys are just making comments and stuff like that, and I'm just like, you're not hitting American wise. You're and like I said, audiences are audiences. They're trying to appeal for more international because sumo is more popular internationally than it is here in America, but they're just hitting. It's one of those things where it's going, foo, like the humor is just, what are you talking about? Or something else. Like one of the guys when I was watching Day 15, he was like in the post thing where Onosato was receiving the Emperor's Cup and stuff like that. He's saying, and oh, is he gonna break records like Chio no Fuji or not Oho Kaio's record? I'm just like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. He's won 4 Basho so far, and he only made Yokozuna. Let's. I was just hearing that. I was just like, let's not get
Well,
ahead
let
of
me
ourselves.
let me ask you this: if you had been listening to the Japanese broadcast and they were saying stuff like that, what would then be your thoughts?
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it would have been the
I
delivery.
mean, there's a balance to it, obviously, but I think having listened to those guys, the NHK World guys, doing their broadcasts, I've kind of warmed up to them, considering that they're doing their absolute best. My personal favorite is Mr. Murray Johnson. You
Is he the
know,
lower voiced guy?
he's the elderly sounding guy.
Yeah. The lower voice guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like him because he's kind of more even keeled and stuff like that. So
right.
that is the thing, is that Japanese delivery. If they'd said the exact same thing, it might have come off a little bit better. But just, I don't know.
Well, like the really
Maybe it's
deep
this other
voice
guy's
sounding guy,
delivery.
he's a Japanese American. And then you've got let me see. I'll actually look these guys up. Because you got Mr. Murray Johnson, I will I love listening to Murray Johnson. And then you've got Raja, who's he's obviously Indian. And then gosh, let
I
me
don't think it was
see.
Raja. I think it was the other guy. Raja is another one of those guys where he's like starts to say stuff, and I'm just thinking that didn't. I mean, yeah.
And then you got the some of the other guys. Gosh, I forget their names and stuff like that. But oh, Ross Mihara, he's the
I think
deep.
it was Ross. I think it was Ross Mihara. His he really does good on that other sumo show,
Mm-hmm.
that the like sumo prime time. He's a little bit better at that. But when it comes to like doing the commentating, it's just like, I it's like, dude, you probably do better as like a host in like a show and tell show, keeping
Mm-hmm.
in your strength. It's like I don't think he's good. I don't think he's good doing, more live commentary is the how I'd put it. It's we have our strengths and our weaknesses, and that's I just don't think it would,
Okay. Yeah, let me see
I mean, it's
here.
kind of like, it's I'm here doing this commentary show. I would think that maybe, I mean, maybe I don't know if maybe I'd sound better doing live commentary, or if I might like this guy might be flopping.
Uh-huh.
But
Interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, it was one of those situations where I was just thinking, it's like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But just backtracking a little bit, talking about Takanohara having to go through the murderers row versus Akebono.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're mentioning Asa Shoryu and Hakuho. Both Onosato and Hoshoryu are in similar situations because I think I think Hoshoryu maybe has like one other Makunuchi guy in his stable, and I'd like to say it's Meisei. I might be wrong.
Yeah, actually, Hoshoryu, because Hoshoryu is in the Tatsunami stable, which is, it's actually, while it hasn't been one of the more dominant as of recently, it is one of the more prestigious and long-lived stables. It like its history goes back to the 19th century. And I think you're right. I think in fact, let me look it up right now because yes, he's in the Tatsunami stable. And if I were to look at who else is also in there right now, I think you're right that it's Meisei. Here we go. Yes. So
But then also I'll talk about Onosato's stable. His only other stablemate who was briefly in Makunuchi the same time he was Shirokuma, who's
yeah.
who's currently in Jurio and just had
he's
Makekoshi.
so he's not coming back
He's not coming back.
anytime soon.
Yeah. His 2 seconds for his ceremony were other guys like were also guys in his Ichimon. Which speaking of which is a very interesting little thing there. So his sword bearer, Onosato's sword bearer was Takayasu,
Yeah.
who not only actually mentored Onosato at Ichimon Daikeikos,
Mm-hmm.
but also was his master Kiseno Sato's stablemate. And his dew sweeper was Yuden,
Yes.
who also was in Kiseno Sato's opening ceremony. So this isn't just two guys in the Ichimon being there. This is like a continuation
Well,
of his master's
yeah, of his master's legacy. I mean, I'm not surprised that Takayasu was picked to be a part of that particular party. I mean, if you look at if you saw videos of the Yusho parade,
he was carrying
yeah, he had
Takayasu's
picked
flag.
Takayasu to be a part of the Yusho parade, even though Takayasu, because I'd have to look back at the convention of like previous people who rode in the cars. I mean, obviously that's not like any records or official stuff going on because Takayasu ended up with a 6-9 record in the Sanyaku, but so I'm not sure how that always goes with someone who is picked to be a part of the Yusho parade, but has a losing record. Although I think it probably has happened in the past. I, I'd have to go back and look at that research, but I'm not surprised that Takayasu is in Onosato's, Dohyoiri, um, party, just because of the connection that Takayasu had with Kiseno Sato, and it's obviously still there. I mean, even for a while when Kiseno Sato, after he had retired, after he had kind of healed up and stuff, he moves around even now. He gets out there, gets on the dohyo, works with Onosato, but he was working with Takayasu for a while.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's video of him. Obviously he's a little bit smaller, but there's video of him, strapping up his mawashi and actually practicing with Onosato. So
Yeah.
he's not just doing this like carrying on the wisdom, like telling him what to do. He's actually showing him literally, like, this is how you do it.
Well, and if you watch the old matches of Kiseno Sato, he was a technical. I look at how he did. He was a technical genius. Like he was great once he got into his signature position, which was like a hidari I think it was a Hidari Yotsu. He is just, he was a monster when it came to if he got in the right position, he had a greater chance of beating you than didn't. He
You
was
know,
just
and then the nice thing is that you could tell he really does have a close. Ono Sato really does have a close relationship with his, even though his stablemates are kind of in that subservient position, you could tell he has a close relationship with them.
Well, now, I think it's going to be interesting because, back for the longest time when we had, just one Yokozuna, we only had one bow twirler, the people who do the ending ceremony after all the matches have concluded. I'm sure you've watched, the bow twirling ceremony. And, now with two Yokozuna, I'm kind of wondering how they. It's been a while since I've been privy to that, and I'm wondering if they have it so that people will alternate now. And I think I'll have to ask about that. I'm wondering if it will have to do with if whoever is the Musubi no Ichiban, the last match of the day, if that means that they alternate as far as that goes.
Yeah. Well, something I do want to bring up is that, the having to face everyone versus not having to face the murderer's row. With regards to that, something that Teru no Fuji had an advantage of is the fact that he had he had like what 5 or 6 even before the what's
The
called merger.
Isegahama.
Yeah, he had 5 or 6 Isegahama.
Well,
Isegahama is a monster stable. 5 or 6 that they had five. They've always had 5 or 6 guys in there, even before Teru no Fuji got in there. They've always had 5 or 6 guys in Maku no Uchi, just Maku no Uchi.
Like if we were to look up, in fact, I want to look up that one, and then I want to look up what. As of right, they have 37 total right now if you count the Miyagi-No guys.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say with Miyagi-No, you have Hakuoho in there as well.
Which an interesting. Go ahead.
Speaking of which, with the Isegahama is the stable that spun off from Isegahama that Aonishiki is in.
Yes, that is actually Ajigawa. And I think what had happened because Aminishiki he's like the I don't know if he's like the nephew or if he's like I think him and the Isegahama Oyakata are actually I think
they're related in some way.
Yeah, well, Aminishiki's father and Isegahama are first cousins.
So they're like how.
So they're what second cousins? I think that's second cousins.
No, it's a cousin 1 generation removed.
Yes.
It's like our we won't mention names, but we've got a few cousins that were closer to in age that are technically our mom's cousins, but because our great aunt / great uncle had them when they were older, the result is there's this generation overlap. So they're less like our mom's cousins than they are our cousins. So they are our cousins once removed. And their children, though they're young enough to be our children, are actually our second cousins.
So when I'm looking at the Isegahama, there is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So actually, even before there's 12 ex Miyagi-No guys, and actually Daiho retired because injuries were too much, so he couldn't move on. So now there's 11 ex Miyagi-No guys. So there's still original 25 Isegahama guys. That's a pretty sizable heya even without the merger. That is a very sizable payout if you think about it.
Right.
And the thing here is that, also, what's his name? Sato no Fuji, who was the bow twirler for Teru no Fuji, since the current Isegahama is going to retire this month because he turns 65, Sato no Fuji retired because apparently he was going until Asahi Fuji wasn't going to be the stable master anymore. So, I mean, that's kind of a ways to, call it a career. You've done that all those years, sort of thing. I know that there's been some other wrestlers who have done that.
Since we're talking just about the current landscape in general, when we mentioned Isegahama, so and you mentioned that about eventually bringing Dad onto the show eventually, and I'm sure that we might be able to make that happen. But one thing that so he was saying Aonishiki is smaller and might not be able to go too far, but I'm thinking you look at the Waka brothers.
Yeah, the Waka brothers are, I mean, they're probably maybe smaller than the average.
They're smaller than the average one, and one of them won a basho, and they've always been in contention to at least be in Sanyaku rank. So, yeah,
Well,
they're smaller than average guys, but they've made themselves relevant, and Aonishiki is bigger than those guys. So I don't think that his smaller than average height or weight is going to be a factor in his long-term success.
yes, I think you're right. I mean, and he's he's the same height as Wakataka Kage. I'm looking at
yeah, but he's easily a good 50 pounds heavier.
Yeah, I would say so. So, I think he's gonna get his first real taste of well, yeah, he's gonna get his first real taste of the Joey gene. Because for all we know, he could be making Komusubi next Basho, given how the Joey gene finished.
Well, not just that, everyone else above him. There
That's
were
what
a
I'm
lot of
saying.
there were a
Everyone
lot of
above him
Makekoshi. Yeah, there were a lot of Makekoshi guys this Basho.
Yeah. And not only that, they're unless they decide out, elsewhere, Wakataga Kage is probably going to force a third, Sekiwake slot based on his 12-3 performance at Komusubi. And
yeah,
so
it's really hard to deny a guy if he'd gone 8-7 at Komusubi. The way that
he would have just slid right over to the east. But that's
yeah,
not the case.
Yeah, but it's hard to deny a guy promotion who went 12-3
and had a share in the Junior show. That was it.
But one last thing, because we need to talk about One Piece.
We're running out of time, so this is how we're gonna finish our episode today.
Well, one thing I do want to bring up, if when we end the I guess next week would just be One Piece. But the one thing I wanted to bring up before we actually ended the episode is, as much as I like Takeru Fuji, I'm wondering if his basho was a fluke.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna say that, man,
I might get some flack from that. And like I said, I really like him, but
I mean, if you're gonna say that, look at it, think of Tokushoryu. You remember Tokushoryu, right?
No, I do not.
Tokushoryu is the penultimate fluke Yusho winner. He M17 West goes 14-1 to win the Yusho. He is tied for lowest Yusho winner ever. And because the judging department just simply waited too long to put him against good guys. I think the only real challenger he faced was Takakesho on the final day. I mean, obviously he did face Shodai, who was, they were both running up, their win scores, but Tokushoryu and that the fact that he was able to win that Yusho, because that next Basho, man, he went like 4-11, and then I think like 2 Basho later he was down in Juryo, and he never really recovered from that. Like that one is, everyone would agree that one was like the ultimate fluke Yusho winner.
Well, it's not that
But I'm glad he
Takeda
won
Fuji
it.
didn't face Sanyaku, guys. He did. Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But
You know what? It's whoever shows up and has the best day, the best wrestling. I mean, hey, it's like when you went out there and you wrestled in tournaments and you got to win, you won a few tournaments, you know how it is. It's like, it's whoever shows up and has the best day. That's what it comes down to. I think, in a lot of times, obviously the ones who put in all the work, they are the ones who are going to, that's going to naturally come,
Well, here, let me backtrack. To be fair to Takeda Fuji, a lot of his losses were close. And a few of them went to, what's it called? Minois that just didn't go his way. So, I don't know. I might be over exaggerating. Maybe I'm just second guessing myself.
I think he's probably, I mean, this was his highest rank, so he got a real taste of what it looks like. But anyway, so that's where we're going to have to cut it for today. We want to thank everyone for tuning in to watch this. A very exciting sumo talk that we've had for today. And next week, we're going to be looking at the One Piece new chapters that come out. So I want to thank you, Matthew, for your ever detailed commentary. And we are going to see everyone next time. Until then, take care.